Understanding Sociology, Chapter 1, Part 2. Sociologists are typically not interested in the reason behind a behavior, but rather on the social forces that systematically cause the behavior. Text explains that theories are attempts to explain events, forces, materials, ideas, or behaviors in a comprehensive manner. Theories are simply a set of statements that are used to search for explanations of the observed problem, actions, or behavior. A theory that is effective can provide both explanatory and predictive power. A theory can be used to recognize relationships in a phenomenon that may appear to be a rare or isolated case. A theory can also be used to understand how one type of change in the environment can lead to another change. Even the best theories are still not the final word when attempting to explain human behavior. Theories are used to provide levels of understanding, with each level having the potential to open possibilities for further understanding. It appears that sociologists view society in many different ways. Some see society as a constant and continuing body, while others see society as being comprised of numerous groups in conflict or competing for rare and valuable resources that society has to offer. Some see society through everyday routine interactions among people that we at times take for granted. The last topics addressed in this presentation are that of theoretical perspectives or approaches in which sociologists use to study society. The first perspective we'll look at is an example of macro sociology, referred to as the functionalist perspective or functionalism. This perspective studies the ways in which the parts of society work together in order to maintain or inhibit the stability of a society's structure. Talcott Parson was a key figure of this perspective that was influenced by Durkheim and Weber. He saw society's stability as a result of a vast network of connected parts working together in order to keep the system or society as a working and stable whole. When looking at society in this sense, we see each part having an assigned function, some more obvious than others. Robert Merton divided these functions into two categories, manifest and latent. Manifest functions are the more open, stated, conscious functions. An example of a manifest function can be observed through a major function displayed through attending college. A college provides a variety of functions, with one of the more obvious being a means of gaining a higher education and more specialized training for the sake of becoming employable. By attaining the necessary training, employment becomes more likely. Fulfilling a necessary function that is essential toward the viability of a society. A less obvious function or latent function of a college could be that of college students being provided with increased opportunities of seeking and meeting potential marital partners due to close proximity, common age, and interests. Families are created, and a necessary function for maintaining societal stability continues. Functionalism also studies the parts that challenge societal stability. Dysfunctions are considered parts or a process that have the capability of disrupting the social system, thus creating instability. Many will see dysfunctions as dispensable, which in some cases may not be deemed a necessity to regain stability. Some undesirables have the ability to create a functional part of society. For example, criminal activity creates the need for security, which creates the need for police protection, and thus provides. The next example of macro sociology is referred to as the conflict perspective. Unlike the functional perspective, which looks at the positive aspects of society, the parts working together for stability and balance, the conflict perspective focuses on the negative, conflicted, and ever-changing nature of society. Conflict theory assumes that social behavior is developed through tension between groups that possess the majority of power and control of a society's valuable resources and of those that have little or no power and control. Conflict perspective examines the likelihood of an individual's ability to develop into an asset rather than a liability to society by studying the results due to the different distributed levels of valued resources such as housing, employment, money, access to education, health care, and political representation. According to conflict theorists, social classes are an apparent result displaying blatant power segregation. The conflict perspective began its increased popularity as a way of explaining human behavior since the 1960s, with peak awareness levels of social divisions due to the Vietnam War and the Civil War. Our last perspective we'll focus on today is an example of micro-sociology and is referred to as the interactionist perspective or interactionism. This particular perspective studies human behavior through everyday social interaction, which are built by individuals' reactions to the many symbols exposed to us throughout our life. Symbols are explained by interactionists as objects that individuals place meaning to. They allow us to make sense of our surroundings. Much of the exposure to symbols is provided and explained to us by family, peers, media, religion, and that sort of thing. Objects are vast due to the subjective relationships between the individual and the symbol. Objects can include material things, actions, other people, relationships, and even language, which is deemed the most significant symbol of all. As you have probably discovered, sociology pulls from a number of venues that provide a variety of variables and views in order for us to further understand why people do what they do. We are a complex species that have the capability to succumb to or rebel against the endless exposures of socialization that bombard us from birth through death. In closing, let's briefly summarize what was discussed. Today we defined sociology as a science due to its systematic study of human behavior. We looked at the development of sociology, which began with philosophers and religious authorities that merely observed human behavior rather than testing and verifying their findings. We discussed the many pioneers that brought their own models and theories of human behaviors as a common means toward social reform, to the present sociologists that look at human behavior through theories and research. We discovered that a sociological theory is a set of statements that seek to explain problems, actions, and behaviors. We also discovered that the best theory is not a final statement, but rather another means to further understand human behavior. And finally, we looked at three major theoretical perspectives that examine society through micro and macro levels. Functionalism being the perspective that studies the many parts of society and their roles in societal stability. The conflict theory, which views society through a division of social class, those possessing the power and control of valuable resources and those that do not. And the last, the interactionist perspective, that sees society through everyday interaction and the reactions to the many symbols we are exposed to throughout our lives.